Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. I am your host, Darlene Hawley. And as always, I am so excited for this week's episode. I have with me Shelley Sánchez, and we're going to talk all things creativity. How do we show up and just be ourselves and have fun, I think, while doing it, I think is where our conversation is going to go. We shall see, though.
We shall see.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to have you on today. And I love that we have some crossover in the work that we do and how we show up in the world. So those are always my favorite conversations. But before we dive into all the fun and all the conversations, take us back a minute. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how in the heck you came on this journey that you're on.
Yes, it's always an adventure, right? So I am a creativity and innovation coach and business strategist. And I'm also the co-host of a podcast for women called Glitter, Grit, and Growth. And all of this really came to be recently after I really started to tap into my own creative genius again and let her free. And that came after 25 years in corporate America, leading product development and innovation teams. And then just recently, like I said, launched my own business. So on a personal level, I am home in Minnesota and I'm married to a Spanish pilot who I met on a study abroad program in Spain. And we have two amazing kids and love to travel and explore all over the world as well.
That's amazing. I love that you met your husband while you were out adventuring yourself.
Exploring, yes.
Exploring the world. It's always fun when that happens and like the stars
Yep.
align and everything comes together that way. So you're newer on this journey. You've recently left corporate and
Yep.
kind of, as I like to call it, when I did this, I've had my business for 18 years and I always joke that I took the leap and the net appeared, thankfully, to catch me because I had no idea starting my own business, like what that was going to look like. I was really good at the work that I did in retail management and in leadership.
Yep.
And I knew I wanted to do coaching once I found out coaching was actually a career, because at the time, when I first started, I had no idea. But I found that it was, and I was so excited to jump out there and like start my business. And most of my family thought I was insane for doing so. But I'm curious, like, what has that transition been like for you, like leaving corporate and starting your own?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. I think, it's funny when you look back and think, when did the seeds get planted, right? I don't know about your story, but at least in mine, I can see glimpses of those seeds, for at least 10 years where I was in corporate, but I was working in product development and innovation and, working with entrepreneurs and working with startups. And then I went and did, actually worked for a startup. So I kept sort of inching towards, this my own entrepreneurial journey, but it wasn't until I got, kind of the boot. So I think this is the case for many people where sometimes you have to get pushed a little bit. And I was in a situation where I was in corporate America with, Fortune actually 125 company, ends up declaring bankruptcy. I end up getting severance and said, gosh, this is actually a gift because I now have gotten that push to say, you need to do, like, this is my time. This is when I actually need to take the leap and do this. And long story short, I ended up mentoring. I decided to give back. So I decided to mentor somebody, and it was somebody who actually helps women specifically start their own online businesses. So I was mentoring her, but in the back of my head was, ooh, she's also got something, that I can benefit from. So it just really changed my mind, I think, on mentorship as well, where I think we all have, I may have been 2 steps ahead of her in certain other areas, but she was 2 steps ahead of me in terms of, how do you create an online business? So it taught me as well that, we've all got things to give and receive from each other in that mentorship relationship too.
Yeah, I love mentorship. That's something that I've done a lot of. I have my coaching clients, but I've also like mentored in other people's programs or taken somebody under my wing at different points.
Yep.
I feel just like you do. I think I'm teaching them and I'm walking the journey with them, but I learned so much about myself and about
Yes.
fitness and the things that I had never, like, it's almost like you're seeing it through somebody else's eyes and getting a glimpse into it. And so I love that that's been a piece of that journey, because I think every
Yes.
single one of us should mentor and volunteer and give back to the community in some shape or fashion, especially like most of the women that I work with. That's like part of like the impact we want to
Yeah.
leave, the legacy, like how do we give
Yes.
back to our communities? And there's nothing more beautiful, I think, than like, bringing somebody along with you and helping
Yeah.
support and guide them in those moments.
Yeah. What's so interesting too is I think, even as coaches need coaches as well, right? So it's so easy sometimes when you can see it from the lens of, look at that person and say, well, this is what you need to do, but yet yourself, you're just so stuck sometimes in our own thinking that, everybody needs a coach or a mentor. So I think that's a great message as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've tried to not have a coach a couple of times over the past 18 years. And I'm like, all right, I think I'm in a good place. I've got this. And
Mhm.
I'll, like end a relationship with one of my coaches. And then not far along, like up the journey, I'm like, hold up, like I need someone to hold me accountable. I need somebody to like
Yeah.
to bounce ideas off of. I need someone to kind of like steer me in the right direction if I start going off on my own little tangent, because
Yep.
squirrel, or all of a sudden
Exactly.
we see something else and we're like, wait, I was on this path, I was doing these things, and all of a sudden we're like, wait, what just happened? How did I get over here? And
Yep.
so I
Yep.
100% agree. I always tell I'm 100% congruent with the fact that like I tell my clients they should have a coach to help grow their business.
Yep.
And I have to have a coach as well. Like I know for myself, like when I've tried to like step away from it, like I don't show up the way that I need to, especially
Yeah.
in a business where most of us are, I'm a solopreneur. I have a couple of virtual assistants occasionally. I might have a contractor come in and help with a project or two here and there. But for the most part, my boss is amazing. And she also, needs to, make sure I stay in line sometimes.
Yes, exactly. No, I love it.
When you were talking about leaving corporate, I had this visualization while you were talking about it, almost like that mama bird kicking the baby out of the nest. And
Yes.
that's something that I hear a lot of my clients talk about. A lot of my clients are coaches, or um, they're experts in some industry, and they're, leaving corporate usually as well, just like we
Yes.
have, to start their own businesses. And I think there's that like loving piece that sometimes it's such a gift. Like I actually left retail and took the leap without being kicked out. And I also had moments where I was like, there was plenty of times where I could have, lost my position or had
Yeah.
left and in a different scenario. And I think it's important that we look back, like, what does that journey look like for us? Like, what are the breadcrumbs that lead to
Right.
it? And sometimes we need to take that leap. We need to, we need to be pushed out of the nest, because sometimes it's too comfy, cozy
Yes.
where we're
No,
sitting at.
there's a saying, it actually comes, I think from improv of saying, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think it's that it's easy within corporate, you get the golden handcuffs, right, as well, where this is easy. So it does take courage, but man, it's so worth it when you just make that leap.
Yeah. So as you've been on this journey, like, what would you say has been the hardest part for you, like starting a business and putting yourself out there after? I know from like I think back to like I thought it was going to be really easy to start my business,
Mhm.
and then I was like, oh my gosh, I was great at customer service and helping people when they walked in the door, but I had zero clue how to actually make somebody walk into my door to help support them. What has been some of like the things that you've noticed for yourself, like as you transition
Yeah.
from leadership into like entrepreneurial leadership side of things?
Yes. Well, I think first it's taking, as you mentioned, there's this switch from when you're in the corporate world, you're basically being told what to do in many cases, right? So most of the time you're reactive. Even in my roles as, product development, innovation, like obviously I was trying to be very proactive, but I think you're responding to a boss, you're reacting to something. You don't have somebody every single day, like you mentioned in the entrepreneurial side, saying, Shelley, you need to get this done today. You're your own boss. So just that mindset shift, I think, takes a while. And then secondly, the technology is not easy because of all of the different systems that you need to set up your business. And so that has been challenging. And I just keep thinking of it, one block at a time, right? You're building the foundation for your business. It's one block at a time, and getting support. I have a coach for that piece of that as well, as I mentioned, and that helps tremendously you can't do everything on your own. And so getting support from other people to help you through that journey is huge as well.
I just realized I was muted. It's like while you were talking, you were making me think of like the building blocks. I don't know. I have kids. I'm a mom of four. And so like we have Legos all over our house
Yes.
at different points and different seasons. And like it's those pieces of like building the blocks together. How do we create something? Sometimes from nothing. Sometimes we
Yep.
have a roadmap. We think, we've created the strategic plan. We know where we're going. We're gonna, we know what we want the building blocks to look like, but things can shift. Or,
Yeah.
we get squirrel, like I was saying a few minutes ago, like something shifts and like we see
Yep.
something else. I'm like, ooh, let's build it this way instead. How do we take it to the next level? And I
Yep.
think when we're building our businesses, like those blocks can move. They're almost like gliding
Yes.
blocks sometimes at the same time.
It was funny because the other week I said, most of the time you're building, right? But there's an occasionally I said the block came out of my wall today. This week a block flew out of my wall that I have to rebuild. But it helped to have that visual to know what I was building. So I love that analogy.
Yeah, it's like the Kool-Aid man came busting through.
I'm like, dang it, I thought I had it solid, but no, I've
Yeah.
popped out of the wall.
And that's part of the entrepreneurship journey, I feel like too. Like it's not a straight path. Like there's going to be the moving blocks. There's going to
Yes.
be, something that comes in and what feels like knocks us completely down. And I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that I'm constantly working on my mindset. I'm constantly working
Yep.
on how I think about things, how I feel about things, like the personal development journey that we
Yes.
go through, whether we're leaders inside of organizations or if we're starting our own business as entrepreneurs. We have to do the work. And it's not something
Yeah.
where you read the book and you're like, I'm cured and I'm like, this is magical. Like I'm constantly learning something new. And it's like, you get to a new place, you get to the next level in your business, or you get the promotion, or land the dream client and you think, okay, I've made it, like this is success.
Yep.
And it's like you're handed new mindset blocks and new things to think about and new awareness. And like,
Yes.
all right, let's do the work again. Like it's like that,
Yes.
as much
No,
as I
I'm
would
a
say one crunch
I
gives us abs, it's the same with our mindset.
Yeah, no, I describe myself as a personal development junkie. So I think there's always something to learn and apply. And I keep thinking of lately, I love this phrase of, zoom out. So I think that helps when you're building as well we tend to get stuck in you know, I'm looking at the one block that popped out this week instead of zooming out and saying, gosh, I actually built, my wall is 3/4 of the way built. Like that's amazing. Look
Yeah.
what you've done. And so, yeah, I love that for kind of problem solving and putting things in perspective and shifting that mindset. When you zoom out and look at all the progress you've made, it's usually a lot more than it feels that time that you're dealing with that one, the one block that's making its way out.
Yeah, it's the piece of like celebration and celebrating what we have done, because so often it can, like, we can get tunnel vision and we're up so close to it, we
Yep.
can't see what's happening. And then when you zoom out, like you said, I love that phrase. Like I can just
Yeah.
visualize it, like zooming out,
Hmm.
seeing like the wide pan framework of it, the
Yep.
panoramic view of it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, like I've actually made progress. I've made some
Exactly.
leaps. Like I've jumped over a lot of obstacles and look at how far I've come. Like let's celebrate these successes, because that's one of the things that I know for myself and even with clients as well. Like we have to celebrate those little things,
Yeah.
because otherwise, like some days it just feels like we're going through the motions, we're doing the things, but like we don't see the progress. But then when we take
Yes.
that step back, we're like, oh wow, look how far I've come. I didn't even know
Yeah.
that I was here. And you like look back on that journey and you're like, okay, like it's not the destination. I'm not at my destination yet, because there's no destination in entrepreneurship. And once you get there,
Yep.
like it's like the next piece opens up. But like looking back and saying, like, this is how far I've come, and actually
Yes.
recognizing ourselves. And whether it's popping up open a little bottle of a mini champagne from the fridge,
Yep.
getting your
Those are
favorite
the best, by the way. I recently was introduced to those and I'm like, oh, where have these been my whole life? The little ones are just so great.
Yeah, I'm like, they're perfect,
But
especially if it's like a Tuesday and you sign a new client or you
yeah,
find something amazing out or you're whatever it is, and you're like, we're gonna celebrate. Like you don't have to have the whole big bottle. You don't,
yeah.
go crazy, but you can celebrate.
Yeah, I think that's especially, I'm finding that out as well, just as a solopreneur, that is especially important to celebrate those successes because it's not as, in the corporate world, it's every other day feels like some pizza party or, somebody's bringing cake, right? You're celebrating a lot and you really have to plan for that, I think, as a solopreneur is set those celebration moments and then surrounding yourself with people like we talked about to kind of hold you accountable, but also be the ones to remind you to say, hey, we just, recorded number 10 of our podcast. Let's celebrate. So, yeah, I think those are important things as well.
Yeah, I love that. I was like, sometimes a girl just needs a box of donuts. I'm
Also
like,
my weakness, maybe donuts
nobody
and
brings me
champagne.
donuts like I used to get when I worked in retail management. Like you were saying, there was always something in the
Yep.
break room, always something fun. And I'm like, I need some donuts sometimes too. Then my husband brings them home and then I yell at him. I'm like, stop bringing donuts home.
Oh, that is my weakness. I'll have to send you a box. So good.
Do you love me some donuts?
Yeah.
When you think about the leadership skills that you learned in corporate America and how you're implementing them into your business, what would you say was like one of the top one or two leadership skills that have really supported you on this journey?
Hmm. I think, like I mentioned, I was most of the time in product development, innovation. And so I think the ability to just start experimenting. I describe myself too as a recovering perfectionist of, growing up kind of as in this era of just, trying to always be perfect. And I had to break a lot of that. And I think the way to break that is by this mindset of let's set this up as an experiment. So, as an example, in the entrepreneurial world as well, like you don't have to have every single step figured out to start. You just need to do enough research to be able to start and then know what the parameters are of your experiment. So you're not going to jump off and spend $100,000 without knowing what you're doing. But at that same time, you've got to get started. So I think I took those skills that I used in corporate, running the product development and innovation teams, and I'm now taking those into both my own experience as a solopreneur and with my clients to say, I know you've got idea, I know that creative genius is inside of you. You've got those ideas that you want to get out. Like, what's holding you back? How can we just start and do it in a safe way that, again, you're not spending way more money than you want to spend or, putting risks in place that you don't need to put in place, but how can we just get started?
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a powerful way we can show up is like looking at the full
Mhm.
picture and deciding how we want to move forward. And I think oftentimes we can move. I think maybe I don't know. A lot of the women I know, I feel like we go into problem solving mode really quickly,
Yes.
and we like the logical piece of our brain is like we have to fix this problem. And I was talking with somebody recently, like how do we empathize and like sit with what we've gone through and what we
Yep.
have going on before we like go to that logical place. It makes me think of like how do we like listen to our gut, settle into our heart, and empathize with
Yep.
those situations and not feel like we have to automatically fix it. And this is something I was actually working on
Yep.
recently with my therapist. We were talking about this. I was like, because if there's a problem, I'll solve it. I'm like, let's do this.
Mhm.
I'm like, I got this.
That's
Like,
my husband.
I'm like, I just want to fix it so we can like go on to the next thing. And I was like,
Yep.
noticing how it was not serving me every single time because I wasn't sitting back and like really
Yeah.
absorbing what was going on and taking it in and seeing how I could use that information. And so that's something that I've been just kind of sitting with is like, how do I sit with it
Yep.
before I go fix it? And maybe I'm not the one that needs to fix it. I think that's something like I remember telling my employees when I worked in retail management, like if something's wrong, don't come to me to complain and tell me all the things that are wrong and how I
Yep.
have to fix it. I'm like, come share with me. Like, what is it that you're seeing? What's the problem? And then what are some solutions? What's some
Yep.
ideas? So we can problem solve this together. And so I think like teaching that so young, because I was in my early 20s when I was in retail management, like I just learned like we had to solve that problem immediately.
Mhm.
And like how do we play with those pieces so that we're not constantly trying to fix, but we're, sitting with it and absorbing it and seeing like what we actually feel in those moments.
Yes. No, I think we have a tendency too sometimes to think like right away preconceived what the solution is or what the, where exactly we're supposed to go. And sometimes we miss even big companies, right? You have a business plan and then you're missing what's happening around you in terms of what the competition's doing or, what the data is actually saying. So that flip of mindset into kind of the, scientist mindset, I think is just a great way to approach problems in life.
Exactly. I was like tunnel vision, like we can get so
Yeah.
focused, like what's right here. We don't ever take a look at what's actually happening around us in the moment.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So tell me a little bit about like one of your clients. What's something that you've been working on with a client? Maybe share a story about the work that you're doing. I'd love to hear a little bit about the work that you're doing and how you're supporting your clients.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of getting started, but I think one of the biggest things, kind of twofold. So one, working with mainly with women to really unbox their creative genius. So I believe we all have, creative genius inside of us. Creativity looks different. The way we express our creativity is a little bit different for everybody. For some people, that's, maybe it's painting. For others, it's writing. My son is studying aerospace engineering. His looks completely different. His takes the logic of formulas and that goes into what he ultimately deems creativity. But I think bottom line, we all have it. What happens in many, many cases is we kind of shove it inside, like we box it up for various reasons. The workplace sometimes is just very structured. We think we need to be very serious, that we can't express our creativity within the workplace. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing is how can we take those steps and the mindset shifts that I just, talked about, like how can we approach this from a different perspective of experimenting, trying new things, kind of seeing where it leads us, kind of a explorer's journey to ultimately express that creativity. And that doesn't always means, I feel like there's been this movement of, everybody needs to quit corporate America. And sometimes that's the right solution. But I don't advocate it for everybody. I mean, it can be as simple as a few years ago, I was like, ooh, I'm feeling this, urge to get back on stage again. I did theater and speech and different things growing up. And so I tried improv and stand-up comedy. And like at the time, that was enough. I didn't need to, go off and try to be a stand-up comic for a living. Probably not going to happen. And so, yeah, for many women, I think, like I said, it's just let that creativity out again and then see where it takes them. So that's kind of the individual side. And then from a corporate perspective, it's all about how do we, organizations again really need to be using creativity within their organizations to drive innovation. And so what happens so often is they get in the path of it's just firefighting, right? Like day after day of reactive firefighting. And so coming in, whether that's leading a workshop or speeches, however, facilitation help to really spark creativity and innovation in organizations as well.
Yeah, the play, like we
Hmm.
play so well when we're toddlers and elementary and like the imagination,
Yep.
arts and crafts and the Lincoln Logs and like building all the things and the Legos and all those things. And like I know like for whatever reason, like I'm starting to see this even with my daughter just turned 13 and like she's transitioning, like she's trying to like
Yes.
playing as much. We still have her Barbies. Don't tell her I told you guys that we still have them because like it's a thing. Like will occasionally go up there and play with them, like uh, and it's so interesting to see from like the mom
Yes.
perspective right now how easy it is for us to transition out of that moment of play and to like we have to do things differently and like what a society boxed us into.
Yep.
And I know even for myself, if I'm feeling stuck or stagnant or things are not working right, it's usually because I'm not doodling or I'm
Yeah.
not coloring or I love to paint. I used to scrapbook. I used to have like all these little creative outlets. And like when life gets busy, which my
Yep.
audience knows is like my least favorite word in the world. Like when someone says, "Oh, things are great, I'm busy," it usually means that I'm not really taking care of myself properly.
Yeah.
I'm doing all the things, but I'm not having fun. I'm not playing. I'm not being innovative. I'm not being creative. I'm not, making my brain think in different ways. And that's usually like a tall tale sign for myself. Like I can tell I'm out of alignment when I'm not allowing some of those pieces in. And so I know we were talking before we started the podcast, like a lot of the work that I do with my clients on communication is like we use improv, we use role play,
Yes, I love it.
we want to do experiential learning activities so we can like embody it and remember it. And it's easier for us to communicate and share those stories and the messages that
Yes.
we're trying to share. And it also helps with our inner critic, like
Yes.
how we're showing up and how we're talking to ourselves in those moments. How are you seeing like play and innovation and the creativity? Like, how are you seeing you're going to bring that to life with your clients?
Yes. So I think some of the things you talked about, having the background as well with improv, I think is just such a great tool, and some of the principles of improv, which I think you use as well, where, yes, and where you're adding on to it, you're getting people kind of in that creative state of flow. I don't know if you've heard the marshmallow challenge ever.
Like, is
So
this
based,
where you put marshmallows in your mouth and like you have to say like fuzzy bunny? Because we did that
no, although that
20
sounds
years ago when I worked in retail. That was one of the things we did. But tell me what you're talking about.
okay, that sounds actually really fabulous. But the one I'm thinking of is actually where you take marshmallows and spaghetti and tape. You have a limited number of ingredients basically, and then you have teams that have to create this tower. And the more and more they've studied it, the group that outwins almost every single time, except for maybe, some real engineers, is
Yeah.
kindergartners. And that's exactly what you're saying. And the reason why is they're unboxed, right? They just start, they grab the marshmallows, they grab the spaghetti, and they just start trying. They try, they fail, they try, they fail, right?
Yeah.
Whereas other groups, they get out their paper, pen, they start planning everything, and then lo and behold, the tower topples over. So exercises like that, I love to use because it gets us again, thinking. Rapid prototyping is another one, if you've ever used that, where you basically take all sorts of different, you take tin foil and pipe cleaners and just, a variety of different things that you could put together. And then you give a problem and then you try to solve it by, basically, again, getting out of our heads and all of this, need to be perfect prototype that's produced. You just start. And so it starts to retrain our brains of, okay, I really can just start experimenting, start doing. That's a lot of what I love to use. And I'm thinking of an example right now where I had led a workshop with a group of pharmacists. They were pharmacy directors, and, a group you would not think would be super super creative or super
Yeah.
into this, and they absolutely loved the improv. I mean, they were like, Shelley, can we play that, word ball game again where we're throwing words at each? They just loved it. So it's taught me as well that don't think of just a certain type of person as creative. Again, everybody's creative. We just express it a little bit differently.
Yeah. I love that. And we put so many labels on like, oh, you're this type of person, so you're not going to
Hmm.
want to do these things. And I see the same thing when I'm working with clients. The clients where they're typically like very like structured and like they have an idea and they're going to run with it and like they don't usually play
Yep.
very often. They're the ones that have the most fun. And
Yes.
they're afterwards they're like, "Oh my gosh, I forgot what it was like to be like this." And you can almost see like a twinkle in their eye and like a light bulb go off and they're like, "I
Yes.
need more of this." And that's what I want for like so many teams and leaders and like the people that they're bringing alongside them. Like, how do we bring that back into the organization?
Yes.
How do we make the teams, you know, like it builds up their culture, their teamwork, how they show up with each other. Just, doing a half day workshop and doing fun activities that gets
Yep.
them to act a little bit silly and let loose a little bit in a different way. Like the way that they grow as an organization and as a team changes and shifts so quickly. It actually
Yeah.
helps a million times more than, a traditional training or workshop, because, usually we're just used to hearing somebody talk for 60 minutes or a couple hours, and like we're writing notes and doing different things. But when they
Yep.
actually get to embody it and practice it and play, and especially when we throw some improv in there and they're like really getting a chance to like
Yep.
flex that creative muscle, it's like magic.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love, love, love that when you can see, like you said, you just see it, you see that, almost like the creativity just coming out. And there's study after study that shows, that when you bring that element of fun in, that it increases collaboration. Like the
Yeah.
science is behind it as well, which I love. It's not just I think that fun is allowed in the workplace. No, it's the science is there. And so I love that part. It both can happen, right? It's not mutually exclusive. You can have fun and work. And when those two things come together, it's just magical in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also thinking too, while you were saying that too, like the piece of mindfulness and
Yeah.
it's like getting connected with our body again, like that, adding that third piece into it as well. Most like most of the leaders that I work with, they don't talk about it at work, about,
Yeah.
just resting or, breathing for 2 minutes and like shifting how we're in that moment, or listening to a meditation, or just stretching, even lighting a candle, having a dance party, like so many little
Yeah.
teeny things that we can do that actually shift completely how we're showing up. And it, I think it adds just to our life in general. Like when we're having fun at
Yeah.
work, you don't have to only have, there was that old saying, like, I work hard and I play hard. Why can't you do both? Like, can't we work
Exactly.
and play at work? And then, sometimes we're working at home in the yard and like we're making it, fun as well. Like, how do we play and work? And like, I think, like, how do we normalize that those two things can be done together and we can show up? And like, I think that's what the organizations and the leaders and the culture of companies really
Yep.
need today, is like, how do we shift that thought process? Like, well, like work is like work, 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 work. And then
Yep.
like you go home on the weekends and like you can go have, fun at that barbecue.
Yep. No, like you said, busy is not a badge that I think anybody should want for their employees. It's not a healthy culture. So
It's not. Shelley, this has been so fun. I want to keep digging in, but I'm going to pull us back a little bit and I'm going to have us go to rapid fire questions. I would love to know, if I could buy you a plane ticket and you could go anywhere in the world today, where on earth would you go? And can I pack my bag and come with you?
yes. So I think I described that my husband is a pilot. So I actually have this issue because we have flight benefits, which means you can fly anywhere that, the airline flies if there's an open seat. So
You really
every
take me
time
with you.
I know, every time I pass by the airport, because I'm, you probably picked up on my wanderlust anyway. So I'm always like, ooh, where could I go? But the place I think I would go. So like I said, I met my husband in Spain on study abroad. But when I had the choice to study, it was either study in Spain or study in Costa Rica. I chose Spain, which I obviously was probably the right decision. But in the back of my mind has always been, what if you had gone to Costa Rica? So Costa Rica. Plus, I just love their pura vida, which is kind of, enjoy the moment. I just love that philosophy. So that's at the top of my list.
Love it. All right. So when you are stressed out, overwhelmed, and tired of being busy, and you want to like reflect, reset, recharge, like what is it that
Yep.
Shelley does to do that? Like what's your go-to way to
Oh,
just reconnect with yourself?
yes. So I just had recently kind of had this revelation. Well, I love self-care, but I recently kind of had this revelation about self-care that you can't force a certain type of self-care, right? So sometimes, as an example, I'm going to go and take a bubble bath or something. And if it wasn't a bubble bath that I needed, and it was really, I needed a glass of water or I needed to meditate. So what I've found is the first thing that I like to do is spend the time to reflect alone. So reflect and say, okay, what is it that I really need? And like I said, sometimes it's just as simple as I need a glass of water. Other times it's, I love yoga. I recently tried, have you ever done a sound bath?
I have not, but a friend of mine teaches them, and I've been watching her social media posts, and I'm like, I need to do one of those. It
Do
sounds
it. So I think I've done like 3 now, and each one has been so I love, love, love. So also, again, given my personality, I love to try different things in self-care, but I would say those are probably the top, but with that first step of what is it that I really need?
yeah, and really, I love that you said, like, shared like checking in with yourself before you
Hmm.
just go assume the bubble bath.
Yep.
I think sometimes, like, I'm a water baby. Like, I'm born in July. Like, Cancer is my water is like the water sign for my astrology, and I've noticed for myself, like, I just need water around me.
Water. Yeah.
Water, like I just need to drink it, like you were saying. Sometimes it's the bubble bath, sometimes it's dipping my foot, just putting my feet in the pool in the backyard, or going in the spa, or going to the lake or the beach. Like, those are all kind of like, I've noticed my happy
Hmm.
spots, but it looks different, and like how I need to be filled up in those moments as well.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, I'm a water girl. I always say it like I'm a Minnesota girl, but I've got salt water in my veins. I love the ocean
Come
and
see me in
all things
California,
there.
and we'll go
Okay,
put our toes in the salt water.
perfect.
I know we talked a little bit about impact and legacy, and that those are things that are
Mhm.
important to you. What is, like, if you were to like wrap it up in a little bow, like, what would you say is part of the legacy you want to leave?
Yeah, so it's something it's interesting. So I've got, midlife, big birthday coming up, and you start to think a lot about legacy. It was actually one of the reasons that I started my own podcast, was just kind of thinking about, I would like to leave a legacy, but I think that the thing that I would most like to be known for, we talked about on the podcast, is just I hope that I inspire people. I hope that I inspire, specifically I'm targeting women in that journey of saying, I hope that I inspired you in some way, that, something I said or some tip that I gave inspired that woman to just let that creative genius free. So that's probably the biggest thing. And then obviously as a mom, you hope that you leave a legacy with your kids of just that you raised good human beings. That's super important as well.
Yeah, I love that. And then I'm curious, like, knowing that information, like, what's one of your top values? Like, what's something that you really hold really true and high in, like, the in your value department?
Yeah, I think so. Probably number one would be curiosity. I think that's even, but creativity, obviously, we talked about a super important word for me, but behind that is curiosity. And I love to surround myself with people who are naturally curious. I think that those type of people, even are okay being wrong, which I love, right? That just that philosophy of saying, well, I have a hypothesis on this, but prove me wrong. Those are the people that I love to be around. I tried to lead that way. And even, Brene Brown, I think, said recently, like, curiosity is the superpower for the second half of our life. Like, looking at the world with that curious lens is just it makes it so exciting, right? To say, I haven't experienced everything I want to experience yet in life. Like, the places, the things, the food, everything, when you take that curiosity into account, it just makes it a lot more fun to live life.
I love that. I was started to smile while you said curiosity, because I my mom used to say that I was nosy, and I've learned that it's actually one of my superpowers, and it's actually just curiosity. Like, I
Yes.
want to know why people think the way that they do, why they do things the way that they do, how I'm showing up, and like, I'm just super curious. Like, I mean, and as a coach, I ask lots of questions anyways. Thank goodness.
Yep.
Like, it makes it really easy for me to coach, because I'm just authentically curious. Like, tell me all the
Yep.
things, because I want to know. And I think, like, curiosity is just something that is so fun to see in other people, like how they show up, and how they
Yeah.
process the world, and how they take things in, and how they, devour it in those moments.
Yep.
Shelley, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Loved our conversation. I know people are going to say, Darlene, like, connect me with Shelley. How do I find her? Where do I go? Tell us how to find
Yes. Yes. Well, I love to hang out, especially recently, on LinkedIn. So it's Shelley, Shelley, and Sanchez, Sanchez. So LinkedIn, or I have a website as well, and it's Shelley again. So Shelley dash Sanchez.com.
Awesome. People are definitely going to come find you. And I know that they're going to want to go for sure because I know you have an amazing free gift as well for them. Can you tell them a little bit about the gift? And I'll make sure all the links are in the show notes as well. So as you're listening, we'll make sure you have all the links to go to Shelley.
Awesome. Yeah, so I have a free creativity guide that I created. So it's 5 steps to unlock your creativity, a guide for visionary women. And you can get that at, so it's Shelley-Sanchez.com, and then it's free-creativity-guide. Or if that's a lot, again, you can just either go, show notes or my website or LinkedIn. I've got it linked in both of those places as well.
Awesome. Yes, definitely go check out that guide. I know I'm going to, definitely a visionary woman, so I'm sure there's something amazing in there that I need to hear today at this season of my life. Shelley, thank you so much for being here. It's been so fun. And that's a wrap, everyone, for another episode of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. Thank you so much for being here. If you are brand new to me, please take a moment and make sure you hit subscribe and follow and leave a review. Let us know what you thought of Shelley and I's conversation today. Tell us what you loved. Tell us what you want to hear more of. We are happy to serve. And if you leave a review, send a screenshot to me either over on LinkedIn at Darlene Hawley or at Coach Darlene Hawley on Instagram, and send me a copy of it and I will buy you your next cup of coffee or muffin, whatever you want.
Or donut.
Or donut. Yes, we're going to buy cronuts and donuts and all the amazing things. All right, everybody. As always, remember, I believe in you. You're allowed to stand out. You're allowed to shine. You're allowed to be you. We'll see you next time.